Working on it. It's taken a few minutes.
It says it's now streaming live.
So good evening. Welcome back to another Ask the OT with Gina Grothoff, where we are working on building towards helping others and consulting in helping them in their parental duties with the aging population. Where we are building towards helping others and
So we're
helping them
jugglers in the sandwich generation.
duties with the aging population.
So Don, I'm hearing an afterplay of what you
Yeah,
just
I know. I had the Zoom on. Sorry.
technical difficulties. We are live today. I'm Gina Grothoff. I'm an occupational therapist of 30 plus years, having worked in adult and mostly geriatric physical rehabilitation. Let me back that up and say geriatric rehabilitation, because as an occupational therapist, it's more than a physical rehabilitation. My role is to help people improve their daily living, to be more independent, to have the least amount of assistance, living in the best situation possible for them, and to be able to do as much as they can for themselves and to improve their quality of life. And I have watched others who are caregivers for people, usually family members, and the struggles that they go through caring for an aging loved one. And I've been in that place myself and have recently been really launched into it at a accelerated rate. I'm going to sit down now. I'm on this patio. I'm coming to you live from Virginia, where Don and I have done a getaway for a few days because we needed that. We've been we've been juggling parenting among working and business and many things, and it's been 16 years since Don and I have gone away, just the two of us. This was before our youngest child was born. And so here we are. We've taken 4 days, 3 nights to get away and have some relaxing time. And yes, we're also working on focused healthy family because that's part of our life and it's important to us. We value it. We do it because we love it, as well as growing the business. And this past couple weeks has been intense as I've been commuting 38 miles into Charlotte from where we now live, pretty much 4 days a week for work. I work just part-time. And I've known there's other work that I could find closer to me. And I finally have made that effort to do that and interviewed at some places. And my mom realized it'd be good to move to where I live, to be much closer. She's about an hour and a half away. Realizing my dad needs memory care. She's been his caregiver, bringing in people 4 to 5 days a week. She's had stretches of time where she had people more when he first came home from the hospital or rehab facility, which she had done several times in 2023. And it's taking a toll on her. And they're both in their 80s. And so we found her this wonderful independent living place. It's actually a continuing care facility, which means they have all levels of care from skilled nursing, memory care, assisted living, independent living. So that's not hospital care, but if you need rehabilitation after the hospital, it includes that. If you need to live where you need assisted living, where you can maybe take care of yourself, but need someone to manage your medications and your meals and laundry and those kinds of things, that's kind of assisted living. Memory care is when your cognition is such that you need to be supervised and that you're at a risk for leaving. And that you need much closer supervision. Independent living is typically can be as young as 55, 60 years old, who want to live in a place so that they can literally age in place, and that if they need a higher level of care, they're already in an environment that provides that. So there was not a room for my dad in the same facility, but because we've moved to this small town, there is another highly rated facility close to us. And they both happen to have openings, and there can be long waiting lists for these places, as we've learned. And so we've jumped to move forward with all of this. And it's a lot. It's a lot to juggle. to help my mom, I'm the caregiver for the caregiver. I help my mom caregiving for my dad, and now I'm helping her with her life. And there's just layers of this, and I'm experiencing it. And I have my professional expertise and background in it. And I also too look for help because when it's personal, there's lots of questions I have in dealing with this. And I am here to help others because I've been through this before. I've helped friends with their parents in similar situations. And I want to help you. Join us here for the questions, and you can ask your questions. And I'd love to consult for you and help you out personally, one-on-one. That's something I'm open and moving forward into doing for people as I put together some different booklets of information and resources.
Maybe we just a thought is talk about the different like bigger areas that would be where you could really consult and help. Maybe it's the transitions and talk about some of the different bigger, like I say, things that you can consult on that would really help.
So a lot of times people wind up in the hospital. Your parent, your aunt, someone you care for, someone who's elderly, they wind up in the hospital, and you hope that they'll be able to return home. And these are maybe old statistics, but for every one day you spend in bed, it takes 3 days to recover. And so even without having a diagnosis like a fractured leg or pneumonia or a stroke or other things that can happen, especially to the elderly population, even without all of that, for every day you sit in a hospital bed, 3 days to recover. The older you are, the slower that recovery is. And that's where people wind up going to rehab facilities before they can go home. Or they go home and then they fall again and wind up back in the hospital. That happens so often. And so that is a big challenge, because if you're in the hospital more than 3 days, you're really sick. There's a lot going on. And once you're ready to leave, they want to get you out of there as quick as possible. And you tell them you can care for them at home, then they're going to send them home with you. If you tell them you can't, then they'll help you find a rehab facility for the short term, or if not for the short term, that's a whole nother thing. And they will maybe give you, living in a big city of Charlotte, you might get less than 24 hours notice that the person is going to be discharged from the hospital, meaning they have to leave and you have to take them. And so if you say, we need rehab first, or they recommend that, you get a list from the social worker, maybe 4 or 5 facilities. And our last situation, we were told you have a day to pick where they're going. And what do you know about any of these places? And yes, you can look up reviews online and read star ratings. But like I told my friend, most of them are 3. You don't want to go anywhere that's lower than that. Yet there's so many other things that you need to consider. Where they're located, how important is that to you versus other aspects of it. So these are the things I've helped my friends with, I've helped other people with, and that I want to continue to help people with. How do you juggle that? How do you manage that? And to have this information from the start when they first get to the hospital. And also before that, you've got an aging parent, you're concerned. Maybe they've fallen, but they've gotten up and they haven't gotten hurt. And you're like, well, what if they really do get hurt? Then what? So knowing what resources are out there, what services are available, how to ask for the services that you need. You can get home health therapy. You can get, go to a rehab for therapy before going home. There are a lot of different resources that Medicare and other insurances will pay for. And yet it's not endless. You've got to know the ins and outs of how much time does this buy you? What does this mean? What's the next step? What if I can't afford care afterwards? Are there other resources out there? Because there are organizations that provide grants to pay for caregivers and other opportunities like that. There's a bug running across my computer. And I don't have all the answers, but I certainly know a lot, the questions to ask. And a lot of times that's the biggest challenge Go away, aunt. Is you're over there now. I'm distracted by an ant on my laptop. I like the outside, but I don't like when outside mixes with my technology. To know what questions to ask when you're in this situation. I prefer the ants to be over there and not crawling on me. Pardon me. This ant just won't leave me alone. Maybe it's Aunt Rosemary. So follow up, Don, help keep me on track here. Areas that I can help people with. So navigating this journey, especially when it involves hospital and rehab, but also, you just moving mom to your house. She lives far away and you'd like to come to her house. And is that even feasible? Can I do that? All the different things that you need to keep in mind with bringing someone into your home or any home. I mean, as an occupational therapist, that's one of the top things I've done over the years is assessing a home and knowing what areas can be a problem and what things you have to be able to do. So
it's very complex too. It's not a simple process. And that's where having somebody that can help you through that process and figure it out, because as we've done podcasts on this, we didn't even scratch the surface in an hour-long podcast of all the things, so many things to think about.
We did that podcast, Ask the OT, Bringing Mom Home. Don, I guess you can reference or send a link of that particular podcast. And we literally said, okay, we're going to bring mom home. What's involved? And I think the first question you asked was something about something inside the house. And I said,
Yeah.
wait, we've got to get her into the house first. Where do you park the car? What does the driveway look like? What does the sidewalk look like? Are there steps? What's the door like? How big is it? Are they getting in by themselves or with help? Are they able to open the door? Right? There are just so many components to get inside. And a lot of times you might think, oh, this is an obstacle. There's no way she can come here. We have a bathtub. She can't step over the bathtub, take a shower. We've got steps. She can't do that. Well, there are lots of adaptive ways of doing things, and they don't even have to cost a ton of money. Sure, there's something like bath fitter, but there's much cheaper solutions to help you get someone in a tub. They don't even have to step over it. Ramps, chair lifts. There are other means. Maybe there's a different entrance that you can go into the house. There are other methods, or they're in a wheelchair, and there's ways to bump people up steps from a wheelchair to get them inside. There are lots of different options. And so thinking that you have obstacles, it helps to talk to a professional to know, what can be done? How can we help to make it accessible? Is it possible?
Yeah. And another place is helping them in talk just a little bit about communication and how important that is. So we're kind of going through that right now, having to know how to be able to talk to, a parent about we're needing to, they can't be at home anymore. They can't be alone or whatever. So it's that communication part plays a big role.
Sure. And whether it's that they're in the hospital and you've got to tell them, look, you need to go to this rehab before you go home, because they might just insist, no way, I'm going home. Well, or maybe, you want to make that happen, but how do you talk to them and not just say, well, no way, Jose, you're not just going home. I'm making you go here. And then they go there and they're resentful and they're hateful. And then I come in to evaluate them. Hi, my name's Gina. I'm your occupational therapist. And I need to find out what you're able to do and where you live at home and what you were able to do before so I can help you get there. And they're like, I don't know who stuck me here. I don't want to be here. Go away. Yes, that's happened to me. And yeah, so are you setting them up for success? Are they going to be angry? And maybe there's dementia involved. And so what they're saying might have very little amount in reality. And when there's dementia involved, you've got to be extra careful how you say things, because things can be heard and misunderstood differently, similar to with the child. You wouldn't explain to a 4-year-old the same way you'd explain to a 15-year-old that, grandma's died, or that, grandma needs to go live somewhere else, or any other thing, right? You would explain it differently to a 4-year-old versus a 15-year-old versus a 30-year-old, or, we have a grown 26-year-old son. That's a different conversation than it is with a 15-year-old or a younger person. And so how we communicate can make a big difference in the behavior. We say the same thing with all the work we've done with parents. Communication can affect behavior, and how we communicate can be an anxiety driver or an anxiety reducer. And this is so true just as well in many situations and especially here in dealing with caring for aging loved ones. We can change how we're communicating. And there's so many layers to this, because if we have a relationship with this person, which usually if we're their caregiver and we're not a paid outside person, there's a relationship there, there's past history, there are past communication patterns that are going to affect moving forward with this process. Does it mean that there's no way you can do this because of bad communication? No, you can always have an impact, even if you can't expect them to change, but we can change what we say and how we say it, and that can make a difference. And maybe it doesn't look like it's making a difference to them, but we've got to keep our own sanity. And if we're doing our best and we're saying things the best way we know how, and we're doing the best that we can, and they're still not happy, that's when you have to say that's on them. We can only do so much. And so there's so many levels to all of this, how we communicate, from just everyday conversation to, I think you need to move somewhere, you need to have help, I don't think you're safe to be here anymore, to just all those levels of conversations. I don't think you're safe to drive anymore. All these different conversations, just how your tone of voice, the words that you say, the setting you say it in, the time of day, when you say it, how you say it, where you say it, all those things matter, and they can have a huge impact on what follows.
So you are listening to another episode of Ask the OT with Gina Grothoff, where we're talking about different complexity parts of dealing with an aging parent or an aging loved one, and the need for help when you got the situation that you don't know where to turn or what to say or what to ask. This is where we come in, and this is what we're trying to do here is give you opportunity to be able to ask the questions. Maybe it's transitioning a parent or a loved one into a facility outside, away from home. How do you get there? And what do you ask? What type of place do they need? All kinds of questions around that. And Gina, you say it all the time. You see these people come in and they get lost. They're just lost as far as what to do, and sometimes they have to make these decisions in split timing, within days, sometimes maybe even with hours, who knows? But
an example, I work in a short-term rehab, one of the places I work, and the insurance, if you have a HMO plan versus straight Medicare, they kick you out sooner out of rehab facilities. It might sound like a great plan, but if your loved one is likely to need rehab after the hospital, if they were on any kind of managed care plans, 8 or 10, maybe 14 days, they tell you on Friday, Monday's your last covered day and we're not paying for any more. And you can file for an appeal, but if that appeal answer goes beyond your last covered day, you pay out of pocket for them to remain at that facility. And where I currently work, it's $400 a day, because they could get therapy services under Part B that would be fully covered, or you just have your copay if you have a plan like that. But if that appeal is not granted, you're paying $400 a day. And I had a family member, the daughter was in with the mom, and the person he was supposed to go home with the wife, and he wasn't quite ready. And she fought this appeal, and she was even in the insurance industry before, and she knew what to say and what to do. And she lost it. And they told her, you can file for appeal again. And so here she is. She's got to decide by tomorrow. And I'm seeing him for his last OT visit, and we're talking, and she looked at me and said, if it was your dad, what would you do? Oh, that's very interesting because I've been dealing with it with my dad. We have been fortunate that my parents are in a really good financial situation, that the cost of something hasn't kept us from doing things, but that is usually not the case. I talked about caregivers, hiring caregivers for in the home. They can get continued therapy on an outpatient basis, and yet it's not going to be 5 days a week like you get at the rehab facility. You know, we see people and they want to go straight home from the hospital. I'm like, you might get 3 days a week of therapy initially, but then it's going to cut back versus going somewhere, getting 5 days in a row. Some places still do 6 days of therapy, much more intensive therapy than you're going to get at home. So, talking to her about, bringing a caregiver in an option, and then I talked about, I know my mom got grants through the Parkinson's Association to pay for caregivers. And this gentleman had pulmonary issues. And so there's different organizations, whether it's dementia, stroke, pulmonary, there's all these different organizations. A lot of times there are grants, there's money that you can get. Even though my mom was financially in good shape, it's still very costly. And this grant gave her some money. She had to go through certain agencies to help pay for caregivers, yet that could be a huge relief to someone who is even, really strapped for cash, but even for anybody in the situation, because all of this care is costly, even with, good insurance plans. So yeah, that just kind of opened up a whole new conversation and things to think about. And we've encountered this many times with people with, different insurance plans, what it pays for and what it doesn't when it comes to therapy services. And so it's something that's really important to look at and to ask, someone about it, because I know Don turned 65 in October, had to sign up for Medicare, and they, these HMO plans look really great, and they cost less, right? And you get help. You can get vision and dental, which you can't get through Medicare, right? You get these extra services, and yet I know if he needs rehab after a hospital stay, the coverage, it stinks. Usually with straight Medicare, if you're making progress, and if you're benefiting from the therapy, showing progress, you can get more like 21 days, but not, and you can get longer sometimes. But so we signed you up for that plan, but knowing we could switch it to a regular
And
Medicare
we
pay.
got a few addendums to it too that cover some of that too, that can help with that too. So
So
again,
knowing those things, because Don does have
yeah,
heart disease. He's had no heart surgery. He's had a massive heart attack in the past, and so who knows? But even if we don't have health issues, who knows what can happen tomorrow? And, seeing that down the road, you think, oh, you've got good hospital stay. Well, you're only in the hospital while you're medically unstable. As soon as you're medically stable, they get you out of there. I mean, it's like when I see people, they come to us from the hospital and I look at their length of stay in the hospital, and often it's 3 days, maybe 3 to 5. If they're longer than that, I know they had a whole lot going on. And I see people who like break an arm and they want to send them out the next day, and they live alone. And they don't, the insurance companies don't care. They don't they don't pay enough attention to, are you going to be able to function at home? Are you going to be able to feed yourself? Are you going to be able to take care of yourself? Hello, little squirrel. I'm sitting on the balcony enjoying the wildlife.
isn't that a thing? Squirrel? Um,
Um, yeah, it's just there's so many complexities. I've been in healthcare, right, for over 30 years. So I've seen the changes that have happened, especially as it relates to therapy, rehab services via rehabilitation hospitals, and what we used to call subacute care. So in a skilled nursing facility where it's short-term rehab, but not to live there, but also the people who need the long-term care. So I've seen all the changes that have happened, and not too much of it has been for the better. Um, yeah, there have been some changes for the better overall, but as far as paying for coverage and things, it's getting tougher. Um, And I can only imagine how challenged I would have been. And, I was in these situations between Don being in the hospital and them sending him home with us. He was 52. He had a massive heart attack that warranted it's either 12 or 16 days in the hospital. It was a long time. And your endurance was low. You were able to walk. We lived in a split level house, but going up 6 steps, a half a flight, was exhausting to you. To the point we got a rocking chair, where you slept in, so you could stay on one level, and but there was no bathroom on that level. And we had a 2-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 13-year-old. And I remember leaving the hospital talking to the social worker, like, what other resources, what other help? Well, people in their 50s have heart attacks all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but do they have a 2-year-old? And I worked part-time. If I didn't work, I didn't get paid. He was the other caregiver, you know, and there was no support for that other than my amazing friends and family who stepped in to help. But there was no support in place for that. And I'm, an occupational therapist, and I luckily was able to think about the help and things I was needed and ask for the help from my friends that I needed. Yet, there's so many areas where they're lacking support and resources. And if you don't ask the right questions or know the right questions to ask, you'll find yourself in a difficult situation, having to make a quick decision, or, taking someone home, and the problem becoming worse. I get
So,
passionate about these things, and I want
yes, yes,
people. So,
and
Don, when are we going to do another? We're doing Ask the OT live on YouTube, and we're going to be doing these regularly and continuing to. But we'd love for you to join us for more lengthy discussions and to work with us one-on-one. I can give you guidance, I can give you resources and information and support you in the progress. And if you're interested in Don's EFT services as well, it's a lot of stress. I did some tapping
yes,
myself today. We're on vacation, but we still have children at home, although they're actually doing fine. But I'm still juggling helping my mom get into these places, these decisions that have to be made within the week. And so I'm having to coordinate from wherever I am. And just the stress and the changes, my parents are getting older, different things are more difficult for them in different ways that I'm stepping up to help them, which I'm grateful I can do. Yet, I wish my brother didn't live as far away as he does. He's 600 miles away. He comes when he can, but he's not local. And so I want to help other people because I get it from so many levels of the challenge of this. And so the tapping is working on our own self-care, taking care of ourselves, which is part of the reason we've gotten away.
mhm.
And I had to tap through my anxiety I had earlier today and my aggravation and frustration. And then I said, you know what? I need some music. And after we get off this, we're going to go play air hockey. I have some cash on me. They told us this was a cashless resort. And then we go down to the game room and you have to have money to get tokens for the air hockey table. And then we can go swimming and we can have some playtime, even though I'm juggling some emails and phone calls from a new job and I'm helping both my mom and my dad because it's 2 different facilities.
I can still enjoy my vacation.
Yeah. And I mean, it's real, um, it's real life. And we're here, we have this timeshare, which is why we're here. And they want to upsell you. And they offered us this amazing deal, but it would mean taking a loan. And financially, we just got out of debt and we don't want to take a loan, even though they offered us this amazing deal. And part of us were so annoyed because we came here to get away. We know listening to the talk gave us the free 3-night stay and our $100 gift card, but it's hard when someone offers you a really good deal. And, if you take this, you're adding a financial burden. That's not something we need right now. And you're like, yes, the value, it's an amazing value. It's wonderful. It's the best deal. I agree with you wholeheartedly, but we had to say no to it. They said, oh, you would spend all this money if you went on vacation. We don't go on vacation. We use our points and go with the resources we have. We're not going and spending thousands of dollars on a vacation because that's not been in our budget to do that. And so I'm a real person dealing with real experiences, where finances can be a challenge, where dealing with parents and kids with special needs and all of the things. But there's things that we don't have to deal with, right? We all have different strengths and weaknesses and blessings and different challenges on our plates. And yet I want to help and support other people. I'm passionate about it, in case you couldn't tell. And I have this years of knowledge and expertise. And over the next few months, I'm going to gain even more knowledge and personal experience that I'm willing to share. And I
On
know,
the job training.
and I'm going to seek support. I'm going to reach out to some people because it is my parents. And so I've got this personal investment in it. So sometimes I have to step out a little bit and ask for some support and some ideas from other people, which I've done and will continue definitely to do in this process. So when can they find out? Ask the OT will
We're
be
going to have to, because it's TBD, to be determined, because you and I are going to sit down and map out the next, hopefully next couple of
Monday
months.
night, 7 Eastern time, and we've been doing some Tuesdays at noon. I can't remember. Or
Well,
when
but like I said, we have to talk
be
because,
on the lookout for more Ask
yes,
the OTs. But you
you
can
can check us out at the focushealthyfamily.com. I'll put the dates up there once we get them settled out. Probably, hopefully this week we can get them settled out and have
and
them out there.
you can find past recordings.
Mhm.
We started them on YouTube as of a week or so ago, but the
Right.
prior recordings, and we've had many discussions related to all these topics on our podcast, focusedhealthyfamily.com. Yes, we do talk parenting, and like we did a whole thing on foster parenting and divorce parenting, but we've also done lots of things on caring for aging people, and a lot more recently, talking with audiologists, physical therapists, caregiver agencies, just all kinds of people, as well as having discussions. So be sure to share this information and, share the podcast. You can listen to it anywhere you listen to a podcast, and you can stream it on YouTube and watch the two of us.
That's right.
Silliness.
So that's it for tonight. And thank you for joining us. And again, hopefully you will, if you're watching this later on, don't be afraid to pose your questions to us via our website. We'll be happy to still work with you and answer those questions there too.
Give us your information so we can send you a direct invite to the next time we do this, because you can come on live to ask questions. You can also send your questions anonymously. You can text them anonymously. A lot of different formats for you to get some basic questions answered. And if you're interested in learning more and how we can help, please reach out.